Caleb Burzan, what's up, man?
Hey man, thanks for having me out here. I appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
So, I just thought it'd be great to have you on and kind of talk about fitness, health, movement, however you want to call it.
Yeah,
Just because it looks like you're doing a lot of cool things in the community.
yeah,
You want to talk about a little bit about your background, like how you got started.
yeah, absolutely, man. So that could be a whole nother story, man. So we'll kind of keep it brief. But I moved up to Marquette. It was about a year and a half ago. I guess it'll be actually 2 years this fall. The main priority moving up here, man, is we just dug the area. We really the nature, the vibe, the experience, man. We dig it up here. So we sold everything. We lived in Ann Arbor, me and the wife. So we sold everything, moved up here, got an apartment, and then I decided to pursue getting my master's degree at NMU. My master's in psychology, so I'm studying that. I got my GI Bill to pay for it.
Sure.
But other than that, man, I moved up here pretty much jobless. We didn't have really a plan. So my background is basically in coaching. I spent 8 years in the Coast Guard. I was kind of the de facto strength and conditioning guy for my Coast Guard unit.
Okay.
So I kind of just monetized that, and turned it into a job, man.
How'd you get that gig as the Coast Guard coach?
Man, there's like the guy in every crowd, man, that maybe he reads the books or something, and just everybody else is just kind of the meatheads. So he might not be the biggest guy, but he might have some of the answers about things. So
Yeah.
it's just I don't know, man. It's always been like people would come to me with their strength and questions and things like that. So I just kind of helped them out, man. Even when I was younger, it's pretty
Yes.
strange, man. But I've always been a reader, so read a few books, man. People don't want to really read; they want to just know what you know, so they'll just ask questions. So,
Right. Because not everybody wants to do that work for themselves. They
Right.
kind of want that. They kind of want the answer.
Yeah,
And so if you can just give them that answer,
absolutely.
I relate to that in a big way.
Yeah.
Because when I was young, I was on the wrestling team right in high school. That was my life
Yeah.
at that time.
Yep.
And working with those guys as a captain, as a senior, I was always like on the workouts, just trying to get everybody dialed in and getting everybody on track.
Yeah.
And I remember having this little personal training gig, and all the guys would be like, "How can I deadlift more? How can I do better on these CrossFit workouts?" My coach was a big CrossFit guy, right? And so
Sure.
he was coaching CrossFit in the wrestling room, and he got everybody kind of drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And so I took it seriously,
Yeah.
and ended up working with those guys off season.
Awesome.
They would get a hold of me in the summertime
Yeah.
and be like, "Hey, are you working out?" Obviously. So
Yeah,
we would
right.
always get together and do it. And obviously not the biggest guy,
Yeah.
but man,
This is-
you got a love for the
Yeah.
movement, for
It's
the
the same
lifts.
for me, man. If we're working out together, man, I wanna see you move better, and I want you to help me move better. I think that's a big thing about CrossFit, man. It's easy to drink that Kool-Aid because it can be fun, man, especially get into that environment with the team and
Yeah.
grind through a workout like that. So
Yeah.
I was in the same boat.
There's something about that as working with multiple people in a group fitness setting. Like
Yeah.
they've been doing that for a long time. There's a good reason for that.
Big time, man.
There's a lot more to that than just solo dolo
Yeah.
in the gym.
It's I'd say most of my workouts, even though I have been a CrossFit coach and have been certified since like 2011, a lot of my CrossFit workouts are solo, man. I just talk about grinding it out by yourself, man.
Whoa.
It's just it adds a different element, man. I love getting in there with 10, 20, 30 people and working out and getting a sweat on, getting your heart rate up. But if you can go out there, and grind through it by yourself, man, it's a different mindset.
That's a very fascinating point of view. I notice the same thing in yoga, right? Because
Yeah.
those studio classes, when you're taking a studio class, you got so many people around you pushing you to breathe and pushing you to, to try new things. And you might not be like showing off, but you're still with a group of people, and you want to, be your best, and so do they. And there's synergetic energy between the two, or between the group. And when you practice yoga by yourself, you get further into kind of a personalized practice. And with working out, it's the same way.
Absolutely, man. I feel like it just quiets. Everything's just quieted. You can hear your muscles almost. From an inner
Yeah.
perspective more when it's just solo session kind of thing. So
Absolutely.
It's not always just fun, man. The energy's not always there. It's definitely hard to do. So it's not for everybody.
It's a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah,
in a
definitely,
big way.
man. I think with the group aspect, you have more accountability. You get a good group of people, and they expect you to be there, and we feed off each other, which is great. But at the same time, I think you have to learn to do it on your own.
I was going to say there's something to be said about being accountable for yourself.
Yeah.
And being accountable to show up for yourself and
Absolutely.
nobody else.
Yeah,
Right.
and you know, in the end, that's what it's all about. You know, if you're only doing something for somebody else, no matter how much that person means to you or those people, your heart's not really in it. You
It's
know what
not
I
going
mean?
to last.
Right.
It's not a lifestyle.
Right.
It's more something you just do on the side
Yep.
because of these people that you value. You have these values and these beliefs based on what these people mean to you.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's why you're doing it.
Yep.
Trying to, prove something.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mechanism of the ego.
Oh, big time, man. Yeah.
So it might sound like nice, like to have that accountability, but that's a huge mechanism of the lower self.
Yeah. Definitely, man. I mean, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, if you look at, like the history of humans and society, man, we're group animals. You know what I mean? We feed off each other, man. Hunter gatherers, people went out on teams and kind of things. So we definitely need that to an extent, but it does come a point where it can become, the ego can overtake it, kind of thing.
That's interesting to talk about, like tribe mentality and understanding how people used to hunt and find food and gather, and they're running down wild animals on foot.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit different than going to Super One, man.
With no shoes on.
Right.
That's a lot different than. Society has shifted. I think technology has made it almost to a point where it's too easy.
Yeah.
And it's really made a difference in the way that we look at food, in the way that we look at activity and how we move our bodies.
Absolutely.
And there's been a huge paradigm shift because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how do we balance that out? I guess, that's the job of human health and performance.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
Right? That's kind of like why
Mm-hmm.
this has developed. It's interesting to trace exercise back to the military.
Yeah.
And could you talk a little bit more about how the military influenced your perspective of exercise and human movement?
Yeah, definitely. So when I enlisted I was in the Coast Guard for 8 years. So I actually enlisted, I was probably around 21 or 22, but I always liked weightlifting. I was an athlete all through my life, ever since I was a kid. I always played sports and
What
did
was
all
your
that.
thing?
So I was actually like a state champion BMX rider. So I was pretty
Racing?
fast on the bikes. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I did a lot. I played the school sports to an extent, but I was never really good in the high school classes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it was really hard to balance the GPAs and the practices. So
Sure.
BMX was one thing that you could just kind of do on your own. So
Mm-hmm.
that was my jam, man. And then after that, I did some mixed martial arts training downstate in Michigan. So to train with Dan Severn. He's a UFC Hall of Famer. So we used to
Yeah.
run and train out of his camp.
Yeah, I've heard
So,
great things about.
yeah,
Was that 108 or what's the gym called?
Oh,
Fuse?
it was I can't remember. This was like
Some
a
gym in
while ago.
Detroit.
Yeah,
Okay.
this was actually at his it was at his house, man. It was in his backyard. He had like
Yeah.
this compound. It was a big pole barn.
Right on.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, man. It was like
That's sweet. Some
Yeah.
grassroots shit.
yeah, it was in Coldwater, Michigan, I think, which is like there's nothing there. So we used to
Right.
drive like an hour one way just to go train with Dan
Sure.
Severn. But it was cool, man. But kind of fast forwarding, so I always had that fitness background, and I always loved like the grind of just getting in there and getting your heart rate up. And enlisting in the Coast Guard kind of changed my perspective because they kind of emphasize different movements than I was used to, and that a lot of people are used to, like running, for example. That's a big thing in the military. They're really big on like your mile time or your mile and a half time,
2
or
mile.
your
Yeah.
2 mile time, which I'm not really built for those kind of runs. So that was definitely tough on me. So early on in my Coast Guard career, man, it definitely was like a shifted mindset of like not necessarily working on fitness because you wanted to, but it became something that you had to do, kind of thing. So if I wanted to be in the Coast Guard, I had to be a proficient swimmer, I had to be a proficient runner, and then the body weight stuff had to be there, the pull-ups, push-ups, things like that.
Sure.
So
Do you hold on to that?
a little bit,
Do
yeah.
you keep that, in your toolbox
Yeah.
to this day because of that?
I still love the body weight stuff. Maybe that's why, I was drawn to like the early days of CrossFit, it was a ton of like when I got out of active duty Coast Guard in 2011, which was kind of like the height of CrossFit in my opinion, like when
Right.
it was really just starting to blow up. They had a lot of body weight stuff. It was really
Handstand push-ups.
yeah,
Muscle ups.
yeah, it just
Right.
just things like that, man.
Handstand walks.
Yep. So it was cool, man. Like I think, yeah, exactly. And that the early CrossFit games, they were definitely influenced by like Dave Castro's military background or whatever, where you're out doing pull-ups and then you're running through trails and things like that. So that's kind of what drew me into CrossFit right when I got out of active duty, and I definitely kept a lot of those kind of tools in the toolbox of my fitness routine. That being said, I've never enjoyed running. It's always been a process kind of thing.
Yeah.
I got to get myself out there if I want to do it, but that's the joy about not being in the Coast Guard. You don't really have to. If I don't want to run, I don't have to run anymore. But
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what my 2 mile time is anymore.
Me neither. I don't time shit.
Right.
I don't time any of that. I feel like it's an organic process.
Yeah.
I feel like putting a watch on it and putting numbers on it, it can be good for your mind, but at this point, I'm not really doing it for my
Right.
mind.
Yeah.
I'm doing
Yeah.
it for a bigger reason, and to kind of set you free. And if I'm looking at a watch and being like, oh man, I'm off my time, and it just brings that mind right back into it.
Right.
And I'd rather be free.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
then it becomes a whole nother thing. Like you were talking earlier about the ego thing. So then you start chasing numbers on runs. Somewhere else you're taking from somewhere to feed to that. You have to find that balance in your training. If you want to do triathletes or if you want to run events, yeah, you should focus on that. But if you just want a better health and fitness, if you want to be a good martial artist, a bicyclist or whatever,
Yeah.
you got to find that balance to where you're not taking out of one domain to just because you want a certain mile time. So
Yeah. It becomes an obsession.
right,
Right, and without looking at it from the bigger picture, you don't see how it's taking away from maybe your strength,
right,
maybe taking away from your flexibility,
Yeah.
which running does,
exactly,
right? So you have to look at it from a complete perspective,
Exactly.
not just this one-track mind, gotta get this time,
Yeah.
gotta get this time. Running's not like that for me. There's certain things that are. I get like that with biking. As far as just abilities go,
Yeah.
but again, I try to leave that organic. If I'm not feeling it that day, I don't get down about it.
sure,
If I'm like, I want to hit this trail, but I don't feel warmed up, I don't feel like I'm ready to hit those jumps today,
Right.
The same thing with jiu-jitsu, you can take it, you can put the throttle down, you don't have to,
right,
ever.
right, absolutely,
You just always, you know what's in the tank. So,
yeah. That's a huge draw for jiu-jitsu, at least for me, because I did have a little bit of that mixed martial arts background, but
yeah.
it's totally different in a mixed martial arts camp. And I was never an aspiring fighter. I never really wanted to like get in the octagon or the ring and really
Right.
battle it out. I like the training elements of it.
Yeah.
So I think you do have some of that like hammer down mindset in MMA training where you don't always have that in jiu-jitsu, and that's one of the brilliant things about jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's more of a fluid art than
The methodical
Yeah.
aspect
Yep.
of movement, right?
Exactly.
There's so much precision
Mhm.
and calculation being done in instant moments of time where you're almost plugged into a different reality with
Yeah.
somebody when you're rolling. You're aware of things that most people can't pronounce, and the moves and the defenses. You're totally synced up. It's
Yeah.
like the Matrix.
Mhm.
You enter the Matrix.
Yeah.
And you go, fight a battle. And
Yeah,
it's like play
it definitely, man. I
game.
think, stress has, like, I would call jujitsu a form of psychological stress, and I think that it definitely has those effects on the brain to where it kind of dysmorphs your time and your perception of
Yeah.
reality. You know what I mean? Because most humans aren't really programmed to be in that environment. They're not used to just somebody else just smothering them, basically. So
Right.
it's different, man. But that's kind of what drew me into jujitsu. Is it teaches you more about yourself than anything else. Even though
Yeah.
it's a two-person or multi-person sport, you learn more about yourself from an inner perspective than anything
Right.
else.
Because where does your mind go
Right.
when you're uncomfortable? When somebody is on top of your face and you can't breathe or whatever. I don't want
Right.
to make jiu-jitsu sound like a scary thing.
No. It's not.
But when
but
somebody is
different.
there, and where does your mind go? Do you say, I need to give up?
Right.
Do you say, this is weird? Do you blame? Do you start to blame others for your uncomfort, for
Right.
your discomfort? Like,
Right.
that's the bigger picture. of where do you go
Right.
when you get uncomfortable,
Yeah. Exactly.
and how far, where's your threshold?
Right.
Let's find that threshold and let's push it further and
Yeah.
further and further each day.
Absolutely.
And that's martial arts, and not
Yeah.
it's not just jiu-jitsu. I'm starting to realize, I'm getting super geeked out about Bruce Lee. Is it's the same kind of deal?
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
You know,
Absolutely.
there's something to be said. And I come from that wrestling background, which
Sure.
is just so, just balls to the wall, aggressive.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, just smash these kids. You
Mhm.
know, that was always the mentality, is just work harder,
Mhm.
make them quit.
Mhm. Exactly.
And
I
it's
think
not like that in jiu-jitsu.
right. It's not. Yeah, but it definitely, as we were talking about earlier a little bit, it's like that primitive response that you get in that situation. You know what I mean? You have that like fight or flight or freeze response. That kicks in when you're in jiu-jitsu, and it's like, what do? You know what I mean? Like, you don't know until you're in that position of what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And even if you're in that position, you might not know what to do, but that's the whole point, man, is hopefully you're learning something.
Right. Right. So, how long you been doing it now?
So I trained at Dan Severn's place. This was before I was even in the Coast Guard, so I trained down there for a couple years. But that was like, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago, something like that, when I was
Sure.
training down there. And then I kind of took a hiatus when I was in the Coast Guard. We didn't really, we were just deployed a lot. I was deployed with this Brazilian dude that was actually like homegrown Brazilian guy that he knew some jiu-jitsu. So we used to go and roll.
Yeah.
Like anytime we have a mat on the ship that we would pull out, and he would basically just, destroy everybody because nobody really knew what they were doing. But
Yeah.
so we did that. It definitely wasn't structured. I didn't really learn anything. I kind of learned what not to do more than anything, which is helpful. But
Self-defense.
yeah, and then I found Lake Effect Jiu Jitsu here in Marquette. I did that for pretty religiously for close to a year before I took a little break.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
Now, when you were in Coast Guard, you were active duty. What does that mean? Like, where were you at?
yeah. So it was I was active duty and reserves. I did both. So I was in for a total of 8 years. I did 4 active, 4 reserves.
Yeah.
So when I first started out, I enlisted boot camps in Cape May, New Jersey. So we went out there for 2 months. Did some training out in New Jersey. Then from there, I went up. I was stationed on a ship up in New Hampshire, Maine, New Hampshire border kind of thing. So I was up there for about a year. Then I went out to California. There was a specialty school that I went to. I was in search and rescue communications, basically.
Yeah.
So we did our specialty school out in Northern California for 6 months or so, and then I went up to Alaska and finished up my active duty time up there.
Wow. What'd you do in Alaska through the Coast Guard? You do some rescues up there?
Yeah, definitely, man. Like that back then, like that Deadliest Catch show was like all the hype kind of thing. It was like the crab fishing's huge up there. So we did like, basically, if you're anywhere in Alaska and you get on a shipboard radio and key it up and call for help, somebody's gonna be there to come get you. That's the
Helicopter.
Yeah, helicopter.
With a
the
hoist.
ship. Yeah.
You get down there.
Yep. So I was like the search and rescue coordinator. So basically, we would take all that information and kind of figure out where you're at, what the situation was, what kind of assets we needed to launch, whether it was a helicopter, a big helicopter. We send the C-130s out to drop a life vet or a life boat. We send a ship. If there's a ship out in the area, we'll send a ship out to get you. So we did a lot of that. We did a lot of law enforcement. Surprisingly, the Russia border up there has there's like a lot of shady stuff that goes along.
No shit.
Yeah.
Like what?
You don't think about it, but there's like Alaska obviously shares a boundary with Russia, which is unique to the United States, right?
People don't really think about it.
You don't think about it, but it's honestly got truth, man. And there's like a lot of black market, because you got to figure both sides. I mean, it's a boundary that's in the middle of the ocean, right? So it's not like a land boundary. There's not a fence or whatever, you know what I mean?
Correct.
So you're just floating around in the Bering Sea, but there's a lot of like illegal trades and smuggling and stuff that takes place. Yeah, I mean,
drugs,
everything. Yeah,
money.
One of the big ones was illegal fishery trades, because like I said, the crab market is very lucrative, man. I couldn't tell you the monetary value, but these ships would go out and basically fill up all their crab pods, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of these crabs, right? And then they would sell them to Russians. So they'd offload them out in the middle of the sea, man, and then they would basically go back out and fish for more, and then they'd bring them in and sell them to Red Lobster or whatever.
Yeah, say they only got this
so they'd
many.
be able to double up.
Double
kind of
down.
thing. Yeah.
That's interesting.
It was
You
wild.
ever seen a whale?
Oh yeah,
Yeah?
yeah.
How close?
Real close, man.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, definitely close enough to to see its eyes. I mean, you get real close. So
Yeah?
not that close to that whale, but
Dude,
pretty close, man.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah,
Before I die, I just want to pet an orca whale.
Yeah, man.
I just want to like feel it with my hand
yeah,
and just like, oh man,
Yeah.
I can't explain.
yeah.
That whale sitting right there. People watching, people listening, but there's a whale on my couch. My dad won it for me as a stuffed animal. I was like 3 years old at SeaWorld. And ever since, like, I just learned more about killer whales and how the only ones that have actually killed people have been in captivity.
Right.
And then everybody who's in like a sea kayak it gets like 5-10 feet away
Yeah.
and has no trouble.
Right. They're curious, man.
They are, and they're smart.
Right.
Divers will take pictures of them, and they'll get 3 to 6 feet away,
Yeah.
and there won't be any trouble.
Yeah.
So I figure if I go out with some some fins and some goggles,
Yeah.
I'll pet one.
It's interesting, man. You might be able to. I don't know.
Off the West Coast or something.
Yeah.
It'll happen
Yeah.
if it's meant to be.
It's cool, man. They're definitely. It's really cool when they get going, man, and they smack their tail around or whatever you want to call it, their back fin, and really kick up some water, man. They're mystical animals. It's
Mystical, I
it's
think, is a good way.
man.
They're huge.
Huge,
I
and
think.
it's once you see it in real life, man, it looks like a floating school bus. It's,
Right. It's hard to conceptualize what that might be
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
I think the same, because this is more relatable for up here, is moose
Yeah.
or meese.
Yeah.
Isle Royale, going to see. Have you seen a moose too?
I've not seen. Well, not. Yeah, I've seen them in Alaska, but not in Marquette. No.
Okay. And like the size, they've said it was like a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Essentially.
That makes sense.
But Alaska, whereabouts do you live in Alaska?
Kodiak Island.
Oh my gosh.
So they got the Kodiak bears too.
Biggest bear in the world.
Biggest bear in the world, man.
You ever come in close encounter?
Very too close. Yeah.
Tell me the story.
Yeah. So my wife, it's kind of the same with the whale thing. So my wife worked for like a, I don't know what to call it, like an air shuttle or an air taxi. Kodiak Island's very secluded. There's like 20 or 30 miles of road, I think. But there's like island's like the second biggest island in the U.S. besides Hawaii's Big Island. So my wife's work would basically fly people around to all these villages on the island, right? So they would do all the mail to all these villages, and then they would do shuttles. Like if you lived out in some remote village, you needed to get back and forth to the city of Kodiak, or if you were just a tourist and you wanted to go on these bear viewing things on these float planes, right? So we were out one time and they had a couple of extra seats on this bear viewing tour or whatever. So they were like, you guys want to jump on? So we got on. It was a float plane. We took off. We landed on this remote mountaintop lake, right where there's this like National Park Service or Wildlife Service has this fish weir thing that counts like the fish. The salmon run is big out there, so they kind of monitor
Sure.
how it is. So obviously, when you have all these fish going through this ladder, it's like shooting
gonna
fish
be
in a
some
bucket
bears
for bears,
there,
right?
yeah.
So we were walking up, man, and my wife. I mean, the bears are just everywhere, and they're sadly enough, kind of used to humans, so they're not like. I mean, if you're trying to take their fish, they're probably gonna mess you up, but they're not like out to just. There's so much fish there.
They're full.
Yeah.
They don't need you.
Right. I mean, if you want to step on their toes, you probably shouldn't, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we walked up on one probably 8-10 feet. I mean, it was close enough to get a smell
Did you
of
shit
it,
your
man.
pants?
Yeah, just about. I mean, this.
Oh my god.
I couldn't tell you how tall they are, but they're probably like 10 feet, a couple thousand pounds.
From what I heard, people talking about seeing them in person it looks like a giant dog.
Yeah.
And they behave like dogs.
Yeah. They're very, yeah, exactly, man. I mean, a dog, most dogs aren't just going to attack you. You see a stray dog, it's not just going to attack you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you times the dog by 40 or whatever, you need this 1,000-pound, 2,000-pound bear just kind of, docilely walking through the weeds, eating on grass, man. It's a trip.
Alaska seems like one of the most extreme places in this country.
Yeah, it's rugged, man.
What made you come to UP after Alaska? Because the way that I look at it, I'm from Lower Michigan, I'm from near Detroit,
Yeah.
so if I moved to the UP, like level 2, like UP times 2 would be Alaska, or
Yeah.
UP times 20, whatever.
Absolutely.
What made you go the opposite direction?
Yeah, so we left. I got out of active duty in 2011. We left, and my wife got a job offer in Lower Michigan, so we moved to the Lansing area in Lower Michigan, and then I stayed in the reserves We lived in Lower Michigan for a few years. I bounced around in the reserves. My wife got a job in Ann Arbor. We went there, lived there for a few years, and we both, I think if Alaska was a little bit more accessible, we would have probably, went back out there. But it's tough, dude, to get in and out of there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's a haul. So the closest thing we found, I mean, some parts of like northern Maine that we visited when I was in the Coast Guard up there, it's Alaska-esque, you know what
Beautiful,
I mean? But yeah,
vast.
exactly. But the UP, man, it has a lot of the same draws, just like you said, on a smaller scale than Alaska would. It's similar though in a lot of ways. So.
And what was the precipice? Like, what was the impetus to move from Ann Arbor to here?
We just love it up here, man.
Yeah.
We used to come up here, man, and like, it was when we left Kodiak, we tried to move to Marquette, and so this was 2011.
Yeah.
We actually drove back from Alaska. We drove all through Canada and then through out west, and then we actually one of our last stops was in Marquette, and we wanted to live in Marquette, so we stayed here. I don't even think I never had been to Marquette before. I just kind of found it on like a Google Maps or whatever, but.
You knew.
Yeah, and it didn't happen in 2011. It didn't happen, and then you get wrapped up in life, right? Like,
yeah,
the habits start taking over, and all of a sudden, a year passes, 2-3 years pass, whatever, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, like 3 years later. So it just kept. We knew it wasn't going to happen unless we just made it happen, kind of thing.
Right. And you said you kind of moved up here without a plan.
Yeah, no plan, man.
How do you do that?
We sold everything. We literally like. We went from like we had a 3-bedroom house, and I mean we didn't have like a ton of stuff. It's just me and the wife and a couple of dogs, but
sure.
We cut it in half, man. Pretty much whatever fit in this U-Haul we took. Everything else, man, we sold it. We gave it away, however you want to do it, and then we just loaded up. We sold our house in Ann Arbor, took the profits, the proceeds or whatever. It was enough we figured we had enough to pay a year's worth of rent, and then if it didn't work out in a year, we'd figure it out. We'd go back downstate and get jobs doing whatever, or I'd go work at Walmart or whatever. You know what I mean? Just to make ends meet.
Right.
So luckily, man, it's knock on wood, it's worked out so far. So.
Right, and you can always find something. I feel like a lot of people get scared to like take a big chance like that because they feel like they're not adequate.
Yeah.
As far as like, what if shit hits the fan?
Right.
There's fear in their minds of like, what if this happens? And that just scares them enough to walk away and say, I'm comfortable enough here.
Yeah.
Did you have any of that anxiety?
Oh yeah, definitely, man. I think that's in the human nature, but I think from my perspective, man, is you're gonna have it. You're gonna have it whether there's always gonna be something you're gonna be anxious about. You know what I mean? Like, I could be anxious about living in Ann Arbor, man. We had cushy jobs, but you could be anxious about the car breaking down or getting an accident on the way to work or getting laid off or whatever. So there's always gonna be those anxieties with life. So
sure. So what's a healthy anxiety then?
Right. You gotta. I think you guys gotta kind of roll with it, and to me, if it's gotta be worth it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be anxious about living in a place I don't want to live and working at a job I don't want to work and stuff like that. So I'd rather be anxious about not making ends meet and then having to hustle harder.
Sure. Doing
something I want to do.
And that's something we kind of touched on before the podcast is like discipline.
Yeah.
And like rise and grind and that whole mentality of being out of balance in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Being real adamant about a schedule and things like this, where a schedule is necessary to have that structure.
Yeah.
But where's your time going?
Right.
You can make this great grand plan to do all these great things and moving in this direction and specific ideas of where you want to end up. Like we had mentioned, like opening a gym might be like a gold standard for a coach, but really just letting that unfold organically. How do you manage that? How do you manage being positive with your time effort?
Yeah, exactly, man. And I think discipline is kind of an overhyped word because you don't necessarily... like, you can be disciplined and be wrong. You know what I mean? You can have the wrong disciplines in life.
Right.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
You can be disciplined to go home and watch TV at night, and that can become your new normal, and then, the days pass into weeks.
Consistently.
So, yeah, exactly. So I think you really have to take account of where you are and where you want to be, kind of thing. And it's just basically, I would say like structure is a better word than discipline. It doesn't have the same like draw, you know what I mean? Like, people crave that discipline. I get it, it's a thing, but I think having structure in
Especially
your
coming
life.
from the military, the
Right.
discipline was probably a huge thing.
Yeah, but it's different in the military. Like discipline in the military isn't always a good thing. Like you could be, you, you're not just like, yeah, you're not living discipline in the military. You know, you are, but it's not. It's forced discipline. You
It's
know what
not
I'm
up to
saying? Like,
you.
yeah, you're not. So that was hard for me when I got out of the military because it's like you get, where's that? You don't have that structure anymore. You know what I mean? Like everything isn't laid out for you. And I'm not downplaying the military. It's hard, but it's like everything is in place. You just got to show up and be the cog in the wheel kind of thing. So it's forced discipline.
You don't have the grand plan.
Right.
Right.
Right. There is the grand plan, but it's not really your grand plan always. So
No. But is it yours now? Is the grand plan yours?
right. Hopefully.
Is it? When you say that you don't really know where it's going to take you and you are open to what happens next, who's in charge?
Yeah. I think as long yeah. I mean that comes a whole other topic of free will kind of thing. Are we
Right, sovereignty. I
yeah
mean, we can get into that,
yeah.
right?
So who is in control? But
It's
who?
like depends on who you give your faith to,
Yeah.
who you give over your trust,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can easily just kind of glide through life unscathed. There's nothing wrong with that, man. I mean, I bless those people that do that. Some days I wish that I could do that and just work some job and just let it be. But it's like there's always that hunger to do more kind of thing to keep you moving.
Well, I think there's a higher aspect to each and every one of us that knows that we could do better,
Yeah.
that
But
always strives to
yeah,
do better.
you have to know that though. Some people, I don't know if maybe they don't want to know it. Maybe they do know it. They just want to ignore it.
Well, you can mask it with a whole lot of different things.
Yeah.
Even things that seem like positive.
Yeah.
Money is a big one. You can mask your dissatisfaction or lack of satisfaction with money, and it covers up for a period of time.
Yeah.
Drugs will do that.
Yeah.
Alter your consciousness and make you think that you're doing good and
Right.
think that you're satisfied. Even just stuff.
Yeah.
Even having stuff will make you feel like
Exactly.
you're doing things right
Yeah.
for periods of time. And then it seems like a wake up call is necessary or
Yeah.
always like imminent.
Yeah.
When you start thinking like that, like when
Right.
you get in those habits or you get in those grooves of thinking that, oh, I got this, and you don't.
Right.
You get a real quick wake up call.
Right.
And then it takes getting those things get taken away
Mm-hmm.
for you to realize what's really important.
Yeah.
What's really going to give you that fulfillment.
Right. Exactly. You kind of I think you have to have you have to have that big picture in mind. You know what I mean? You kind of have to know where you're going before you start the journey kind of thing,
Like see the future.
Yeah. In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, one of the things I study psychology is mindfulness. And basically, I'm more focused on like performance and sports psychology than necessarily general psychology stuff.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
study a lot of like mindfulness, and I'm really big on studying like visualization.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. I think that's like one of the most underrated areas, especially for athletes from an athlete perspective, even just like everyday people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we could all learn something from like seeing things before
Sure.
they happen,
Like if you have a meeting and you really
Yeah.
want to perform, or if you have a presentation, if you have, what have you.
Yeah.
Visualization. So kind of walk me through like some just basic strategies to like getting started in seeing the bigger picture, seeing things unfold before they happen.
Yeah, so I'm really big. Okay, so like, I think you can't really talk about like mindfulness and visualization without really talking about goal setting. I think everything starts out with a goal. Probably first it starts out as an idea, right? And the ideas are just kind of out there, and then once it is kind of written on paper and actually kind of a plan starts to form, it becomes a goal kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm really big on that. I think everything has to start with a goal, which is easy for athletes because there's always that competition or that tournament or wherever. So it's easy to get an athlete to focus. Everyday people, it can be tricky, man, because like we just talked about, I mean, you get stuck in life and
What do I want?
yeah,
What do I really
you
want?
get stuck making money and doing drugs and just hanging out, man. And
And people will tell you what they really want. They want a promotion.
right.
You know, they want a new house, they want a new car,
Right. So I
and
think
then let's look at a little deeper,
yeah. So
right?
that's a good point, and that's the kind of like goal setting, man. Is I use what's called SMART goals for myself. I use them for any of my clients, anybody.
Specific,
Yeah.
measurable,
Yep.
attainable,
Exactly. Realistic and
realistic, and
timely.
timely.
So like you said, man, you want a promotion. Like that's a goal, but it's not necessarily any of those things, right? Like we all want to make more money, but how much? $1 more, 25 cents more, $100,000 more? Like it has to
Yeah,
be specific. You know what I
right.
mean? It has to be measurable. You got to know where you're at. You got to know it's got to be timely. It has to be time bound, basically. It's got to be realistic. You can't go from, making, you could, but you can't really go from like making 10 grand a year to 150 grand a year. It's difficult, man. So it's got to be realistic goal. And
Realistic.
that's tricky. That one's interesting, man, from a coaching perspective, because you get these people that come in and I've fallen in that trap where they're here, they're at point A and they want to get to point B, but there's so many steps in between that make it, you have to hit all these, point A1, point A2 before they can get to point B
I have
kind of
people
thing.
come in to me and say, I want to lose 50 pounds
Right.
in the next, what, 3 months?
Right.
Dude,
So that's a big, that would be the main goal. You got to break that down into,
sure.
micro goals. I mean, I don't think you can really break a goal down to be too small. You know what I mean? If you want to lose
No,
50 pounds, it starts with a pound. It starts with a pound a week, and then you know what I mean. You kind of build on it
right,
from there.
right.
But yeah. So getting back to the sports psychology, yeah.
Visualization,
So
right.
you
Setting
always, yeah,
goals
you
once you
got to have
have
a
your
goal,
goal.
right? So you always have to have a goal, and then, like you said earlier about you have this thing coming up. I think you said a presentation or something. So that can be an anxiety provoking experience for a lot of people for whatever reason. They just don't like to present, which I get it. I've been there. Sometimes you just don't want to do it, but there comes a point where like the decision's been made, you're going to do it. So you might as well be prepared for it. That day's going to come regardless of if you wanted to or not. So no matter how much you mask it or hide it, it's still going to be there. So for visualization, man, that's, a presentation is perfect because you could easily run through it 1,000 times in your head. You know what I mean? You can set up, I've even had people go so far as to setting up like empty chairs, or I've done it myself where you set up empty chairs. You know what I mean? You run through your whole presentation kind of thing, time yourself, see where you're at, see where you want to be. And then, that's like more of a physical visualization, but you could even do it in your head. When you're lying in bed at night, man, you close your eyes, you can easily put yourself in that situation, fairly easily.
You could do that anywhere at any time.
Anywhere, yeah, yeah, exactly. And
That's
I
the
think,
beauty of it.
yeah, the more realistic, the better. There's been studies like in sports psychology or performance psychology where like your motor neurons will still fire at the same rate as they would if you were doing the event. So that's a huge one for athletes, man. If you're running through drills in your head, and the more realistic you can make them, right? So if you add your five senses, whatever, touch, taste, feel, obviously they don't always apply to everything, but the more you can add to the environment in your head, the more realistic and clear the image will be, and then your brain, your motor neurons in your brain basically think that it's doing it. You know what I mean? Your muscles aren't carrying out the action, but it doesn't know that.
Right. It's almost like you could will the action into existence.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
With that metacognition, thinking about how you're thinking and running yourself through it, you can almost manifest exactly the outcome that is desired.
yeah, exactly. And and I think it's also important to. I think a lot of people fall short in visualizing what could go wrong and then making
Whoa.
plans for that.
And what happens?
Right.
It goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right? You start thinking like that.
Yeah.
You invite that into your consciousness, which is the world, right?
Right.
Basically, the world as you see it. I mean, how you choose to see it.
Right.
That is the reality you're gonna live in.
Yeah. I think it's always, I mean, people always preach like no plan B and stuff. I get it, but you kind of got to prepare for those backup plans, a plan B, a tertiary plan. You got to kind of at least know how you're going to react if that doesn't unfold, just like it would if you when you visualize it kind of thing.
Sure.
Because it can be vastly different. You could probably do it dead on. You walk in your presentation, it's exactly like you visualize it, you nail it. The presentation, the time could change, the room could change, the people could change all of a sudden.
The fire alarm might go
Yeah,
off.
you never know,
never
man.
know what's going to go
So I think,
on.
yeah, it's important. I think that kind of wraps it back into like jujitsu. what are you going to do if your first plan doesn't really work? You know, the person's probably going to give you a look at something else, right? So you always kind of have those backup plans that build off each other.
That evolve in the moment.
Exactly. But they're not going to do it if you're only visualizing the good when the good doesn't happen, then there's no, you did yourself a discredit.
Well, right. It's all good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
It's all
all
good.
good,
It's
right?
all good, but
We tend to forget that it's all good, even if our plan doesn't come through
right.
exactly the way we've seen it.
Yeah, yeah.
When we visualized it, it's our expectations that really kill that moment when you're in it and it doesn't come through,
Right.
and then it feels like failure, which doesn't exist.
Right. No.
Failure is not even it's a construct.
Right.
It's not truth.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. It's kind of a failure is more of a perspective. You know what I mean? You kind of give it what you think it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean failure can mean different things to different people. But I think it's just important to when you're visualizing, especially like in the sports world, just think about the contingencies that could happen, kind of
Yeah.
thing. You know what I mean? And then plan for those. You can't just visualize everything running seamless from start to finish all
Right.
the time, right?
Right.
It might
And
not run like that.
and visualization, there is a component, or there is a you can get great at it. You can get detail after detail after detail. It seems to me like it builds as you use it more often, as you utilize that skill. Your skill set grows, and you are able to see plan A, B, C, D, E,
Yeah,
F, G, H, I, J, and run all the way down.
exactly. And that's the point of visualization. Yeah,
Wow.
that's kind of what I meant. Originally when you got to plan for those, man. No, you're not going to fail. If you visualize something happen, it doesn't happen just like you thought it would. You're not failing at it.
Wow.
But
Now you're playing a complex game of chess.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. And the more,
That's great about
yeah,
jiu-jitsu too.
it is.
You work with a lot of kids.
Yeah, I have in the past.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's interesting too. Because we talk about these things, and they're super beneficial for maybe us in our lives, and maybe the clients we work with, or
hmm
people listening. But for kids, I didn't learn nothing in
nothing, man.
school. I
No,
didn't learn anything about visualization.
Mm-mm.
I didn't learn anything about money.
No,
I didn't learn anything about applied knowledge,
right,
application, consistency, discipline,
right.
planning. It was all kind of like, what do you agree with that? Like, how do you feel about your experience? You said you were doing, would you say you learned more from the BMX riding than you did school?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I think that and it's hard to say now as like a master's student. You would think that I would like school, but I don't really like school necessarily. What I like about school is it kind of builds off each other, right, and gives you more tools for the toolbox, man. The more way you can think about one topic, the better off you're going to be at
Sure.
that topic, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, especially in our primary schools,
I'm saying public schools,
yeah,
elementary through high school.
yeah,
You know,
you don't get that, but it definitely at least maybe offers some kids that are open-minded enough or have open-minded parents enough to like kind of think about things on a bigger scale.
yeah.
And at least maybe they'll pick up something like I would say 99% of it's probably useless for most kids, but maybe you pick up on that 1%, that one thing that you like, and then you build off that kind of thing.
Right. It fascinates me. If school could include things like martial arts, I mean, Boy Scouts was something that vastly changed. I don't know if you look at what a man means, right? A male at a young age and what they develop into, the values that they build. I know my father was a Eagle Scout, and you just see there's certain values, there's a certain nobility that
Mm-hmm.
he carries, and all those things are learned behaviors,
Yeah.
right, at a young age, and he found that through Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
I was kind of a punk kid doing the skateboard thing for all the way
Yeah.
through middle school, but I was able to find that eventually in wrestling, and I strive to help kids find that whatever it may be, whether it's gymnastics or martial arts or getting outside in nature, or
Yeah.
just understanding that there's certain respect that we got to have for everything, like a reverence.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think, like the exposure definitely helps. I mean, you can only learn so much in school. You can learn a lot in school, but you have to be able to learn like about life from other ways. You could read everything in a textbook.
Hmm.
It doesn't always apply.
Hmm. And teachers as role models, I think that could be huge.
Yeah.
And like a teacher really stepping up and being an example.
Yeah, I think that's probably hard because I think like teachers are kind of bound by the construction or the constructs of the school board or their
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that definitely, especially in the public school system, because it's definitely hard, man, when you're introducing a teacher maybe that isn't from like I was raised in a small town, so if you get some big city teacher that came in there, like they might not be welcomed. A lot of their ideas might not be welcomed by necessarily the parents, the school board, the other teachers, things like that, the locals or
Hmm.
whatever. So I think that can kind of be tricky.
Right? I know a pushback. There was a pushback in Marquette. I know a local teacher was showing Into the Wild,
Yeah,
and some of the parents were like, "Why are you showing our kids that?"
right. Exactly.
And there's some pushback on that. Into the Wild about, Christopher McCandless
Yeah.
going into
Yeah,
Alaska
yeah.
and dying, right? That's a powerful movie. That changed my life forever when I saw that
Yeah.
as a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah, man.
That really opened my eyes.
That's what I'm saying. I think teachers definitely, good teachers are definitely great role models, especially for these young men in particular, probably. But it's probably hard to be a good teacher in today's world. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I don't really know much about public schools, but I would assume that there's a lot of pressure outside of the classroom on what
absolutely.
happens, kind of thing.
And it's funny that we say for young guys, because we both know as a young male, it's like an animal.
Yeah.
Like young boys are like animals. Like you
Yeah,
ever
man.
watch like young dogs play with each other?
Yeah.
They're savages.
Yeah.
They're
Absolutely, man.
so they butt heads with school like none other.
Oh yeah.
Where girls they do so much better with it. In generally,
Yeah. Right.
generally speaking, they
Yeah.
do much better in those
Yeah,
circumstances,
absolutely.
containing themselves, like just carrying themselves with a little
Yeah.
bit more
Yeah.
dignity.
It probably comes back down to the like, discipline or forced discipline kind of thing. That was the last thing I wanted when I was an adolescent, teenage, or even a pre-teenage male kind of thing. I didn't really want somebody else's opinion forced on me kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to figure it out myself, but
Right. But you're still like that,
yeah,
which
definitely.
is cool,
Yeah.
right? And I think some people break.
Oh, big time,
Some
man.
people
Or,
break and they compromise
yeah,
themselves.
I don't know if they really break, but I would say they assimilate. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They just become that cog in the wheel. I think that's what, if you look at like the industrial revolution, right? That's kind of like where schools kind of got their backbone or their structure
Yep.
from, right? So
The bell rings,
yeah,
you move positions.
yeah,
You take a seat, you follow directions. The
right.
bell rings, you move position. You take a seat,
Yep.
you follow directions.
Until the bell rings, then you go home, kind of thing. But
And there's lunch break. It's
yeah,
fucked, man.
it
It's the
is, man.
same concept.
And that is a dying concept in the workforce.
Well, there's
So
how much, production do we have here in America nowadays?
right,
It's
not as
all
much.
export, it's all imported. So
Right.
we gotta create more of a creative, um, critically thinking, somebody who's able to critically think to find unique solutions to complex problems.
Yep. Exactly. But I think that's why and that improves a little bit in college. Not always,
Sure.
but you do have to some degree more freedom usually
Usually
to
more freedom,
to
not all freedom
no,
though.
definitely not, man. And you probably no one there's probably nowhere where you're ever going to get like true freedom within a structured environment like that, you know what I mean?
Right. When you
But
have, you got somebody giving you grades.
right. Exactly. It's a hierarchy, man. It's all a hierarchy.
Right.
That's what's so great about like what you're doing. You know what I mean? You're with this, you're just expanding knowledge, offering the tools. Maybe some people will take it, maybe they don't, but
Yeah, we put it out there.
yeah,
That's the main thing is just we're throwing it out there.
yeah,
There's a lot of cool and really the difference between knowledge and wisdom is experience. So
sure.
there's a lot of people in general with a ton of experience, untapped,
Yeah,
right? The little things that they pick up through the course of their lives that is invaluable, priceless,
right.
just waiting to be exposed.
Yeah,
And to talk to people like you who are on the front lines of that, talking about this visualization, talking about like the psychology, talking about coaching, it's a positive movement.
yeah,
And to put that out there as an offering, who cares who listens? I don't care who listens to this.
right.
It could be one person. And if it changes their lives, great.
Yeah,
And if nobody listens to it, we had a nice conversation
yeah,
today.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. That's kind of my coaching philosophy in a nutshell, man. It's like I look at my coaching philosophy as like less of a religion and more of like a medicine almost. Like a religion, I feel like they want you to buy into the system. They want you to keep paying your dues and be there for a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you go to a doctor to get treated, get better, and get the hell out. You know what I mean? If you stick or if I'm coaching you, man, and you stick around for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, great. You know what I mean? We can do great things. But I'm not expecting you to do that. I'm expecting you to get better, learn the tricks, and then take them for what they're worth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's a great way to look at it, man. As a personal trainer, that's a buzzword, man. I haven't used a personal trainer. I don't call myself that since like 2 years ago. Strength and conditioning coach, like movement
Yeah.
coach. I think that's important. And I never really looked at it that way because you always think about the long term. And I see what these people can do that have been training with me for 2 years. And it's like, wow, the sky's the limit,
Yeah. Exactly.
right? The sky's the limit for what these people can do. Imagine 4 years,
Yeah.
imagine 5 years. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thought, but never taking that for granted.
Yeah.
That makes it even more special,
Absolutely, man.
right? Every time they walk through the door, it's a surprise.
Yeah.
And what a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
These people are trusting you with their body.
Yeah.
Like, that's powerful.
Yeah. Definitely, man.
It's like, what an honor.
Yeah.
So, no expectations in that regard. And I like that as a medicine because, I mean, the medicine that is getting thrown around nowadays is baffling to
Yeah.
me.
It is, man.
And in the world of psychology, do you guys ever discuss like the antidepressant
Oh, yeah.
and painkiller epidemics that are going on?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, a little bit. It's definitely not my field,
Sure.
but it is a field, a major field of psychology. It's out there, man. I mean, what it all comes down to is it does the same thing that it it lessens the effect of these acute emotions, right? Like if you're on antidepressants and all of a sudden you have a depressive episode, you take a couple of, antidepressants or Xanax or whatever, you feel better, right? But you're just putting a Band-Aid on an open wound.
Okay.
You're not really treating the why. You know what I mean? Why are you like that? Where that's why I love coaching, man, is you can treat that why. I
You
think
get down to the root.
yeah, you can get the same effects. It's the thing about it, man, is like we talked about in the beginning, it's like technology's made it so easy to just jump to the treatment kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's not even a treatment, it's like the temporary fix where you could
Right.
easily spend 20 minutes of mindfulness meditation, dude, and just work on your breathing, breathe into your organs, breathe into your body, and kind of you can treat that, man. You can visualize those anxiety invoking events and then kind of work through them in your head in a safe space. Like your head's the only safe space that there ever should be, right? Like there's no such thing as a safe space, but in your head, man, it can be because it's just you.
Right.
So
And I think the process of that is interesting because there's so many thoughts bustling around in your head. It's like a beehive at
Yeah, yeah.
times. And to slowly start to see those thoughts
yeah,
go away.
yeah,
And that takes so much consistent effort
Yeah.
to get to the point where you're able to clear out. It's like practicing anything. The duration of time that it takes for you to clear that bullshit out of your head
Yeah.
gets shorter and shorter. Just like when you're, let's say, running, it takes you less time to balance out and your heart rate starts to normalize and you start to get into that, target heart rate
Yeah.
zone and it becomes doable.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing goes with meditation.
Absolutely.
But I like what you said about the open wound. That reminds me, I did a lot of landscaping as as a younger guy,
Yeah.
and that's where I started off in business. Started a landscape company,
Awesome.
and pulling weeds, I could be an asshole and just cut them with scissors or just pull them out,
You're not pulling the roots though.
but you're not pulling out the root.
Yeah. That's
You're
what
not
happens.
getting to the root.
They
And what
just-
comes back? They come back right away
Yeah.
if you don't pull out that root. So
And the same, I mean, look at the Roundup thing now, man. You could spray them with the weed killer.
you still got to pull them.
Yeah. Well, you're treating it with the Xanax or the antidepressants, right? You're spraying chemicals on it, but you're not you could just reach in there, do that a little bit of extra work, the extra digging, and get to the root of it, man. It's the same concept in psychology.
Right.
And yeah, I like to think about mindfulness is a vastly huge topic, right? It could take you so many places, but I like to think about when you mentioned like your thoughts, right? It feels like a beehive kind of thing. Like I always tell myself when I tell my clients, like, yeah, think of your thoughts more as like the clouds of the sky, right? You can't stop a cloud. It's gonna go, right? You could put your hands up if you wanted, and the clouds they're just gonna go through your fingers, right? It might slow it down a little bit, but it's just gonna keep on moving, and that's kind of what we should do with our thoughts. It's when we
Let
try
them,
to, we
yeah.
try to stop those. We try to stop those clouds is when you start getting fixated on those thoughts, where you just gotta let them go, take them for what they're worth, and they're just thoughts, and they just move on.
Yep. Like a river.
Yeah.
Right? If there's a fish in the river and it jumps up on the shore and maybe you're holding on to it, let it go back in the river.
Exactly.
Because you hold on to those thoughts, especially if they're interesting to you and they seem like they require more thought
Right.
in order to receive an answer. But the only way to receive that answer is to let that thought go.
Right.
And then what comes back
Yeah.
from that space is the truth.
Exactly. Or maybe, a few times from then you'll get the truth. But it's just to repeat the process kind of thing.
Yeah, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you're working with people on this.
Yeah.
How so?
So we haven't really started like the full, like,
I seen what you're doing on Instagram, and that's honestly was the impetus for me contacting you and just being like, Caleb, let's sit down.
Yeah.
Man, like there's so much to be discussed here. Like, what are you working on?
so mostly most of my stuff's like research based right now. This fall, hopefully, everything gets approved. We're actually running some mindfulness experiments for my thesis, where we're actually like putting people in stressful situations and then, giving them certain levels of mindfulness training and kind of taking some physiological measures at the end to see how it affects you. But a lot of it's just trial and error right now, working with clients, working with, myself. I'm always the guinea pig. I don't really tell anybody. Nothing I say is fact. Try it out yourself. It's just what I've experienced, what I know.
It's something I've done.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
worked or didn't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are you advertising? Are you putting this stuff out there in any way? Is there any way that people can learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I got a website. I'm pretty bad at updating it, but it's calebburzan.com. I'm on any social media. I'm probably most active on Instagram. You can definitely follow along on my stories. You can reach out to me on that. Right now, it's a lot of like just kind of grinding out the boring research aspects of it. A lot of studies, a lot of library
Yeah.
hours, things like that. So it's not a lot of hands-on stuff. I do offer a little bit of hands-on coaching, a little bit of phone coaching, things like that. I don't really advertise it or push it too hard. One, because it's got to be, I hate to say it, but I don't want to just take on like any client kind of thing. It has to be a good match for me and the client.
I find that same thing.
So, I don't really push it on people. I do a little bit of coaching, but
Tends to, once you take that approach to it, it is provided.
right.
The clients come.
Yeah.
They talk to you. They ask, what are you doing? How can I get involved?
Right.
But
Exactly.
the moment that you take a sales approach and start saying, "This is what I do," you could get the most benefit. Where do you see yourself? You know what?
Right.
That's when you get, stiffed,
Yeah.
shut down.
Yeah. And I don't want to deal with that. I if it's a good fit, it'll work out and we can make something happen. But I'm not in it to. I mean, I think we're all in it to make money in a way, but I'm not just trying to take money to take money kind of
Right.
thing. You know
The
what I mean?
offering
Yeah.
is being put out there and what people
Yeah.
choose to do with it.
Eventually, hopefully by this time next year, I'll have a lot more. Right now, I'm in so deep with just book work stuff that I don't have the time that I would like to have to dedicate to like more speaking engagements, more one-on-ones, things like this. Hopefully by this time next year, I'll have a lot of that research done to where I can actually step back and kind of work on it at a face value. But
Sure.
right now, it's a lot of like literature,
The grunt work.
yeah, the not so glamorous stuff. But
Sure.
that's where Instagram usually is my break kind of thing. You know what I mean? I'll try to just unwind and just kind of offload because we kind of mentioned it, man. Like you can learn all you want if you're not like sharing that knowledge or putting that out there. And maybe people take it, maybe they don't. I don't care. I'm not selling anything to anybody. If it helps them, it helps them. It helps me. That was why I put it out there, kind of thing. You know what I
Sure.
mean? I hope it helps a few people. Great. You know what I'm saying? But ultimately, man, it's about just trying to make yourself better, and hopefully, a few people along the way jump on.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's real cool, and I'm sure we'll be in touch with more to come.
Yeah, man.
People want to get a hold of you, Instagram. People want to get a hold of Unity Human Performance, Unity 906 on Instagram,
Absolutely.
Information Operation Podcast. Till next time, guys. Ride the waves, dude.
Thanks, man.